All right, let's go, let's go.
And it makes a fiery
Let's get started. I'm excited.
bound by wild desire.
Hope you are too.
I fell into a ring of fire.
We're gonna get going.
I fell into a burning ring of fire.
Yay, yay.
Down, down, and the flames went higher. And it burns, burns, burns. The ring of fire. The ring of fire.
All right, here we go. While everyone's jumping on, I have 2 questions for you. I want to know where you're from, and I want to know what your oil of the day is. I'll tell you what my oil of the day is. My oil of the day is the gift. I'm loving me some gift. My arms smell amazing. What oil are you using today?
The taste of love is sweet. When hearts like ours.
Yeah. All right, I'm getting lots of notifications here. Yep, you just watching in the event.
But the fire went wild.
What oil are you using today? Okay, I'm gonna have to look here because I can't see comments there. Lemon, lavender, peppermint, clarity, sniffle ease. Believe, Shelby in Alaska, her oil of the day is Indoflex. Gentle baby, frankincense, abundance, dragon time. Love it. Love it, love it. There's a reason I'm playing this song other than Johnny Cash is the man. That's because I felt the intensity of the Ring of Fire with my first child. And we're going to talk about the science of that a little bit. Let me close that down. Okay, so I can't see comments here. So you'll have to tag me if it's a real question. I also have some moderators, so I want to introduce them. First, Denise Easton is a diamond in our organization. She is an experienced midwife and a mom. I always say 27, but I think it's actually 9 children. And, sorry, bunch of notifications on my phone. And then Kari Friedman, also a diamond in our organization and a fellow home birthing mom. Michelle Viquez also has deleting authority tonight in this group. She retired from her nursing career to pursue Young Living full time and is a home birthing mom. And then one of my very best friends in the entire world is Emily Reeves. So she's also moderating. So if there's questions I don't get to, they can speak for me, okay? So where to even start? I don't wear glasses, just so you know. These are my blue light glasses for screen time. So if that confused you, don't be confused. I actually have perfect vision. John doesn't, so it's the one thing I can hold over his head is my vision. Okay, so let's get out the disclaimers, shall we? None of this information is intended to treat, diagnose, or cure. So there's that. It has not been reviewed by the FDA or anything else with initials. This is my own personal opinion, and it is for education purposes only. So I will get into, hi Michigan, hi Midge. I will get into first my story and my history, because I want you to know where I'm coming from. So I actually was raised literally in a midwifery school. My mom owned a midwifery school. She was a midwife, and I was raised at the knees of midwives. And I grew up going to birth conferences and midwifery organizational meetings and different stuff like that. So the birth world's just, it's been ingrained from the very beginning. But I can tell you, like with my faith, at some point I had to make that knowledge my own and not rely on what I was hearing, but decide for myself, read it myself. I'm just checking to see if there's anything I'm missing that's important. Not that I can see. Okay, so I had to make it my own. And I started reading books about birth and pregnancy off of my mom's shelf when I was 13, because I figured this was something I was going to do one day. I was going to equip myself. So enter pregnancy. Well, pregnancy number 1 we lost. Pregnancy number 2, who is now 13 and a half, came along. And I spoke with my mom, retired midwife, and I said, you know, Mom, I need to find a midwife. And she had this funny attitude about it. She was like, okay. And I thought she was going to be prepared to give me, like, here's the list of questions you need to ask your midwife or whatever. I thought that in my head, I thought that somehow this was going to be easy, and it wasn't. And I found a midwife who was fine, great, no major issues. But looking back after that birth, I realized there was some unfulfilled expectations, and there was a little bit of disappointment in myself. And if any of you saw the birth video, you might look at it and go, that was a great birth. It was a home birth. There was no major interventions. He came out of the water screaming and crying and pink and beautiful. But I felt like I should have been in more control. I felt emotionally unstable, and that I could not handle the pain well. And it was a very, very long labor. So it was 22 hours with about 16 hours being really difficult. Just checking for messages. Okay. So there was a turning point when I realized why all of that was. And of course, this was years before we started doing oils. I would have oils in the cabinet from like the health food store, but they never did anything for me, so I didn't use them. You know, it would get shoved to the back behind the homeopathy and the herbs and whatever else we had, supplements, and didn't see anything entirely grand out of essential oils at all before getting living. So there was a point a few months postpartum with my first that I watched the video, and there was a point where the midwife was checking dilation, and I yelled at her that it hurt and to stop. And there was a look on my face that shocked me, and I had never seen that look on my face. It was anger, it was disgust, it was a look of war. And I saw that look on my face, and I thought, no woman should have to battle. This should never be a war, ever. And I decided that the disappointment and the lack of connection that I felt was that I was looking for outside forces to change my inside game. And I expected somehow, because my mom was this huge, huge name in the childbirth world, and that I had all this knowledge, I had all this head knowledge, I had all these books, all these years of training, all these years of sitting, on the carpet, coloring, listening to audio tapes, so that my mom was, writing books and creating courses and all these things. I assumed with my first child that somehow all of that would matter and it would save me from something. And what I learned was that I was still looking to the outside to change my inner game. And that look on my face changed everything for me. And I decided right then that I was never going to look for an outside thing, anything, entity, person, mindset, anything to change the game for me in childbirth. And that I was going to surrender to the way it had to happen. And because at the end of the day, there are only 3 drivers in childbirth, and that is mom, baby, and God. Mom, baby, and God. So this is where I have to say, you can save me, please save your breath, save your typing. If you type dramatic things like, had I not been in the hospital, my baby and I would have died. I've heard a lot of it, okay? I've heard a lot of those stories. This is not about the exceptions. This is about the general populace, and this is about the way birth is designed and how we're supposed to look at it in light of Young Living essential oils and how we're building our businesses and how we're helping women. And so any comments about like whatever, first of all, my first thought is you didn't have a crystal ball. One intervention leads to the next. So, this is not to bash people who have their babies in the hospital. It's not to bash hospitals at all. There is a need for this, and I'm going to talk about this more. There is a need for medical intervention when it turns medical. But birth is not inherently medical. Birth is not inherently pathological at all. It's natural. It's as natural as having sex. It's as natural as eliminating. It's just a miracle. And it involves another life. And so it's a bigger deal, but at the same time, it's nothing out of the ordinary. It is an ordinary, everyday miracle. And if birth were very dangerous, none of us would be here. Medical intervention around birth has only been in the last 100, 120 years. So as a species, we are crafted for survival. And of course, I believe we're intelligently designed, and that design most of the time works. So I'm going to give you some pointers about using oils. There are so many comments here, I can't even see. I'm going to give you some pointers, and I really can't watch the feed. So if there's important questions, hopefully the moderators are watching and can answer quickly or get that back to me. Okay, so my first point is that we need to set intentions clearly, and that we need to set our bar really, really, really high. Harriet Hartigan says that birth is as safe as life gets. And I want you to think about that for a minute. We hold birth to a higher standard than anything else we do in life. Now, are there lives at stake? Yeah, but there's also lives at stake every time you get into the car, right? Birth is as safe as life gets. We can't make it safer by intervention when there is not any clue of anything being pathological, okay? Birth is not pathological until it becomes medical. And you are not pathological because you are pregnant. So in our group, we maintain that pregnancy is not a state of disease or illness, and so we are not going to ever have a prescriptive mindset about pregnancy or birth. A prescriptive mindset is the obstetrical Western mindset of a pill for every ill. You've got this, you take this, you do this, you use this. Well, that's not the way I teach my team. So I'm going to tell you how I teach my team. And I'm going to tell you something. It's way above compliant. Okay, so if you're feeling lost about how to support your pregnant moms and how to educate there, we're going to talk about that. But the first thing we have to learn here is that our intention has to be so high that it's so far above the wellness line, we don't even see the line. We're shooting for perfection. Intention is the most powerful tool a pregnant mother has. Intention paves the way for safety, efficacy. It paves the way for pleasure, enjoyment. A mother's intention is everything. Why? Because we cannot have an emotional reaction absent of a physical reaction. This is one of the reasons essential oils are so powerful for our emotions. So I use this example. If you stub your foot on your coffee table in your living room, I'm sure many of you would curse under your breath a little bit because the coffee table's been there for 6 years, right? So you're all angry about it. You get flustered because your toe hurts, but also, you know, what a flippin' idiot. I walked right into it, right? You have an emotional reaction. When you get a phone call that you've lost someone you love, your body feels it. You cannot separate your emotions and the chemical reaction that's happening in your body. And if you only understand one thing from this about birth and pregnancy in general, please understand this. Birth is chemical, not mechanical. Birth is chemical. It is not mechanical. So setting your intention and helping mothers own their own personal self, their authority, their autonomy, they're in charge of themselves, and we're not giving them prescriptions is the most powerful thing you can do for them. So I'm not going to give some of you what you want. Some of you want recipes, and I'm not going to give you recipes. I'll give you one, but I'm going to make you wait for it. I'll give you one. Because what we're going to talk about here is going to be the most powerful thing we can do for women, and that is a shift in our paradigm, in our thinking about birth in general and pregnancy, that it's not an illness. And so we're going to stop treating it like that. So in an ideal world, we would be educating women along through their pregnancy. They would be oiling themselves, and then they would be so well equipped and so well oiled, and they would be in charge of their supplementation. They would be in charge of their decisions, that when it came to birth, if they wanted something, then they would know exactly what they wanted, removing any birth workers from being prescriptive. Okay? And as a reminder for anyone who's ever jumped on, none of this information is intended to treat, diagnose, or cure. Yeah. I'll also tell you I have been to a lot of births. A lot. But I'm not a midwife. I never felt called to be a midwife. I always felt it wasn't my calling. And I love birth. I love talking about it. Giving birth to my own children was the most miraculous thing ever. But I am not a midwife, and I'm not a midwife for a reason. Because without the initials behind my name, I feel for me in my place and where God has put me, I'm a better advocate for you. I am a stronger advocate for real, unhindered birth when no one could ever say that I stand to make a profit off of what I say about birth. I do not stand to make a profit off of it at all. So, yeah. Okay, so we're gonna set our intention high. We're gonna set our intention for best case scenario. Best case scenario is what I call unhindered birth, and so that looks very different to different people. Obviously, the more alone you are, the more unhindered you are. So for those of you who are listening from the very beginning, when I talked about my first birth, and how I changed my mindset of realizing at the end of the day, it was just me, baby, and God, and no outside force could save me from this train that was going. I started studying the real thing, okay? So this is kind of like studying our oils too, in that when you know the real thing, then the fakes jump out really easily. So the United States government, when they are training people on how to identify fake bills, fake currency, they don't give them fakes to look at. They give them the real thing. And people study real currency. And that way, if a fake comes across their desk, they're going to know instantly that it's a fake. So we can see that with our oils. And this is what we should be, setting your intention and setting that bar high. This is what we should be looking for birth. We should not be, preparing for worst case scenario. You know what worst case scenario is? 911. That's worst case scenario, and that's why they're there. And thank God they're there. So the World Health Organization, let's talk about the state of birth in our society right now. The World Health Organization says that there is a sweet spot for cesarean section rates between 10 and 15%, okay? And you can watch Marsden Wagner. You can YouTube Marsden Wagner. He's phenomenal. But there's a sweet spot, 10 to 15% C-section rate. Less than 10%, the neonatal mortality rate comes up, okay? Because there is about a 10% need, real need, for cesarean sections. And these would be for any number of reasons. But more than 15%, the neonatal mortality rate swings up again. In our country, we are at a 33.6% cesarean rate. Something we were perfectly designed to do is now becoming more and more unusual. And of course now, in different states and different hospitals, there's laws about being able to have a VBAC in that hospital or in that birth center. And a lot of women are forced to have a completely unassisted birth because nobody will attend their VBAC. And this is where licensure, of course, I'm not going to get into it too much, but this is where licensure throws women under the bus. And just as a side note, I will have you know, I'm going to give you some book recommendations, but I don't recommend books that are about the cause, and I don't recommend books that are about the birth worker. I recommend books that are about the mom. And the mom owning her own birth and her own personal autonomy. Because we can abdicate authority, but we cannot abdicate consequences. No matter what happens or what anyone tells you about the health of your pregnancy or your birth, who is taking that baby home? Who's taking their body home? Their body may have been abused. Their body may have been questioned. Their body may have been treated like this ticking time bomb ready to go off. Not respected as a beautiful, created creature who's capable of bringing this baby. It is insanity to think that we cannot birth our babies well without real clues that something is awry. It's insanity to think that your body will get pregnant and grow the baby, and then when it's time to get the baby out, just doesn't work anymore. Something went wrong. Maybe the baby didn't know about the calendar. Maybe the baby doesn't understand 40 weeks and it's going to cook forever. no baby cooked forever. I promise you. No baby cooked forever. You know what starts labor? I'm going to tell you what starts labor. What starts labor is a hormone secreted in the baby's lungs that tells mother's body baby is ready for life outside the womb. No calendar can excrete that hormone. Baby's lungs excrete that hormone. And yet we have asthma on the rise. And why? Maybe it's because we're giving our babies eviction notices. Get out. We have to set the intention higher for women. We have to tell women they can do it, no matter where they choose to do it. I would love to see more home births, but I am certainly not bashing any of you who choose hospital birth. But I will just tell you, you are in their house, so you will have to play by their rules. So as long as you know that, then you know that, right? Second thing is we need to release fear. We need to identify and release fear. So when I was in labor with my first child, again, this was before oils. When I was in labor with my first child, like I said, I was really taken aback by how incredibly painful it was and how long that labor was. And afterwards, when I identified that I felt like a watched pot, and the next child I had, I did not want so many people there. I didn't want a midwife. I didn't want family. I just wanted my husband and my son. And so I went from, I started researching this hormone cocktail, and I had read about it before. And this hormone cocktail is what facilitates labor, and it's what actually creates a boundary of safety. And people who work with animals understand that there's a hormone cocktail. I mean, how many times did even your dad tell you, like, don't disturb the cat who's giving birth because she'll stop labor, right? I mean, you've heard it. How many of you have seen the video on YouTube of the mom elephant and her baby is born and the baby is not responsive, and she takes her long trunk and she picks that baby up and smacks it. You know, of course, us humans, you know, and we don't give birth to 200 pounds or whatever a baby elephant is. We see that and think like, oh, that looks so aggressive. But that mom knew exactly what to do because she was left alone and her intention and intuition was intact. And if you want to really, really know what birth can look like, I encourage you to read stories online about women who've chosen to have their babies without any professional there. Not because the professional automatically makes it unsafe. This is not bashing midwives. I love midwives. But just because when their intuition is perfectly intact and no one's giving them ideas, no one's making suggestions, when that's intact, they may choose to do something that seems odd. There's these great stories about, you know, these women who said, I don't know, I had this weird sensation that I needed to hang, and so I went and I hung off the, you know, what is it called? Headboard. The headboard, and I started swinging my hips side to side, and she realized later that it was a shoulder dystocia, and that swinging of her hips helped move that baby down gently, when she never had any of her other babies that way. A mother's intuition is incredibly powerful, and we're handing it over to people who will never understand. Namely, I'm sorry, men. Birth is not a feminist issue. Birth is a feminine issue, okay? Feminist issue is the right to vote. A feminist issue is I should get paid the same as a man. Men have never given birth. It's not their place. It's our place. It's our gift. It's our rite of passage. It belongs to us. So what does that mean in terms of responsibility for us when we're educating people? It means we do not give prescriptive advice. So sometimes it'll come up in our group. Does Young Living have something like a prenatal? What do you think I'd say to that? This is what I say. You know what? Everybody's body is different. I don't even like prenatals. You know why? Because it's one size fits all prescriptive mindset. we should be becoming more and more in tune with our body. So I can tell you my nutritional needs based on my history and my diet and symptoms. Remember what a symptom is. A symptom is just a clue that a system is not functioning fully. Okay? A symptom doesn't necessarily need a name. But I can tell you I was a vegan for 7 years. This was back when I was a professional dancer. And I felt great as a vegan. I was full of energy. It helped me, of course, to stay super thin. I felt like I had enough muscle. There was never a problem. I didn't have hormonal issues, even at my thinnest. I was always very regular. So when I got pregnant with Brennan, I was at about 4-5 months, and I started craving red meat like nobody's business. Serious craving of red meat. And I would call John on my way home from work and I'd say, I need a burger. I need a burger so bad. And he had never known me to eat meat. And I didn't even really eat anything that had eggs in it. Like, I was pretty straight up vegan. I did have honey, but definitely no meat or cheese. And he was like, yeah, like, you're just in a mood. Come home. And about day 3 or 4 of that, I need a burger so bad. He said, okay, come home. We're just going to talk about this. We're going to talk about it. So I went home, and I told him, really, I have to have red meat. And he called my parents, and he said, Heather thinks she wants to eat red meat. And my dad was like, yes, she's back on our team. And they took me to a really nice steakhouse where I ordered a steak. And when I put it in my mouth, it was like medicine to my bones. It was the most soothing, building thing I had done my whole pregnancy. Just one bite. And so I can tell you now, because now I'm 14 years out from that, I can tell you now that there were some ways that my body was affected negatively by that veganism. And I'm not saying veganism is wrong for anybody. I just don't think I was a great vegan at the time. There were certain things that maybe I was missing nutritionally. I can tell you what my nutritional needs are. I tend to run low in Bs. I tend to run low in omegas. I know what I need to supplement with to be healthy. I know that I feel really great when I'm on Nincture. So the question of, does Young Living have something like a prenatal? How should we be answering? Well, the most compliant answer is, have you looked at the supplement line? What do you feel your nutritional needs are? You know, have you looked at the gamut between the multigreens and the mineral essence and the Nincture and the Omega Gies and the Life 9? Have you looked at that? And what do you feel? We don't need to give prescriptive answers. We need to give them the power to make the choice for themselves and encourage them to educate themselves. Because in the end, who's living with their body? They are. In the end, who's growing a healthy baby? They are. And also, it keeps you super compliant. You're not going to find in my groups of me giving prescriptive advice about pregnancy, even though I know a lot about pregnancy. But it doesn't matter. They need to know a lot about pregnancy, their body. So this hormone cocktail, I encourage you to read. There are so many notifications here. There's no way I can get to these, you guys. This hormone cocktail, I encourage you to read about it from Sarah Buckley. Sarah Buckley wrote Gentle Birth, Gentle Mothering. Now, I will tell you where I differ from Sarah is that she writes from an evolutionary standpoint, and I fully believe in a God, the Creator, who created the world and us in 6 days and rested on the 7th. Literal days. And so that's my belief system, because all evidence and the language of love points to that. Hormonal cocktail. is what keeps us safe and happy. And of course, this is in the absence of medical anything. So let me give you some examples. Okay. Serious need for medical intervention would be cord prolapse. You get a true cord prolapse, you don't have any choices. If you get a true cord prolapse, you need serious medical intervention immediately. But let's talk about how society has duped you and have made you so fearful of a cord. I don't know how many of you have actually ever touched the cord or played with the cord. Do you know that the cord wrapped around the baby's neck or a knot in the cord pretty much means nothing? How many of you had babies and you were told, well, you know, the cord was wrapped around the neck. Was your baby fine? Your baby was probably fine. I'm going to tell you something. Babies are resilient little buggers, okay? They're pretty resilient. You'd actually have to work hard to kill them. A cord wrapped around the neck might be the most brilliant thing in the world because, as Dr. John Stevenson says, adept baby crafted for survival. Some babies have a long cord. So what is cord prolapse? For those of you who have no idea, a cord prolapse is when you're in labor and the cord falls out of the uterus through the cervix and baby's head presses against the pubic bone and it pinches the cord, okay? That could be quite serious. Although it's not common when left alone. Do you know when it's most common? Do you know what happens most? Is when the bag of waters has been prematurely ruptured. When left alone, it's incredibly uncommon. When mother left alone and not touched, not messed with, it doesn't happen very much. So a baby with a long cord may have rolled itself up in that cord to keep cord prolapse from happening. A knot in the cord may mean nothing. I've played with knots in a cord. Most of them you can slide up and down the cord. That Wharton's jelly, it just slides right up and down. Did you know that? It is beautifully created to work. And yet we take this beautiful thing that should be covered in blessing and it's now shrouded in fear. And anything we fear will come to pass on some level. Your words are incredibly powerful. Your words create your reality. Your baby is swimming in a soup of your emotions. What type of emotion do we want to give that baby? So what are some of the hormones that facilitate? I encourage you to do your own research. Some of the hormones that facilitate labor and add to its safety, efficacy, and ecstasy are oxytocin. Oxytocin is a hormone of love and connection. You get oxytocin when you hug somebody. You get oxytocin when you touch a hand. You get oxytocin even maybe to a small degree, seeing pictures of something you love. Animals can produce oxytocin in us. You have the biggest surge of oxytocin in your life right after baby's born, and the oxytocin helps expel the placenta. You also have adrenaline, you have noradrenaline, you have prolactin. All of these hormones help, they have to come in together and they work perfectly together. When we have intervention, and even emotional intervention of someone saying, I attended a hospital birth of a friend, and I knew it was going to be hard. I knew it was going to be hard because I don't go to hospital births very much. But I had a friend who wanted me there, and the nurse came in. She'd only been there, I don't know, 2 hours or so. And the nurse came in and said, when are we going to start thinking about what's best for the baby? What do you think that did to Mom's confidence? Mom felt fine. Even in my 22-hour labor, if you'd asked me, how do you feel your baby is? I would have said, fine. Most women, when they talk about it, they know. And that's one of the beautiful things about studying the real deal, because a mother's intuition is strong. If a mother says something's not okay, we need to go in, you need to listen to her, because something's not okay. If a mother has an intuition that something's off, we need to listen to that. We need to honor that, because she knows that baby and baby knows her. We should not be putting in ideas into women. So this hormonal cocktail transmits the language of love, and the language of love that transcends. Sorry, I was getting a phone call. If you're in Redondo Beach, please don't call me right now. I don't know who's calling. This language of love transcends time and space. This language of love is this hormonal cocktail, this beautiful dance between mom and baby, and by interfering with it, we're messing with the recipe. And again, sometimes this is necessary. Most of the time it's not. So what does all of this have to do with essential oils? I'm gonna tell you. Is that we should never look at this as prescriptive. We just shouldn't. It's way above our pay grade, even if you're an experienced midwife. How many of you have, and I really can't see all, oh, this one doesn't have a cover. Just a moment. This book, right? If you don't have this book, I highly recommend it, Releasing Emotional Patterns by Dr. Carolyn Mine. I don't necessarily recommend her nutrition advice because she has an online course. Sorry, Dr. Carolyn, but nobody should be eating pie 8 times a week. I don't care what your body type is, but I've had some of my members test out that they got to eat pie several times a week. So no, but the emotional connection to oils are spot on. So if we used a prescriptive mindset about oils for women when they were birthing, we could potentially create an emotional release when they weren't ready. That wasn't the right time or right space. So for those of you who have a love-hate relationship with lavender, do you know that the smell of lavender is connected with the emotion of abandonment? So if you have some deep-seated abandonment issues, do you think lavender is a great thing to whip out on a laboring woman? It's not. It's not. This is why education through pregnancy, so she can make her own decisions, needs to rule. The limbic system is beautiful. The limbic system is the most powerful sense we have. Our limbic system is connected to our pineal and pituitary gland, the emotional seat of our body, in a way nothing else is. Remember talking about that phone call you might get that your loved one has passed? Okay, I've had those phone calls. Where do you feel it? Does that emotion stay in your head? It doesn't stay in your head. It goes to your body. When my mom called me and told me my dad had died, I felt it in my lungs. I couldn't breathe. My chest hurt. When I was worried because my son broke his arm and my husband was rushing him to the hospital, where did I feel it emotionally? In my gut, where worry is. I'm just hoping that it wasn't a bad break and it didn't require surgery, and of course, you know, that he pain and blah 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 and being in the hospital. We hold worry in our gut. Your limbic system has the power to communicate with these systems that react to the emotional chemical responses in your body in ways other things don't. So we want to be very cautious in creating any type of quick shift for mom and baby. She needs to be in charge of all shifting, all of it. There's nothing superfluous about creation though. So how do we find this balance, right? There's nothing superfluous in the Word of God. And the Word of God tells us that there are reasons that He made the plants to smell. My Bible also says that a man's years will be to 120, and we're now accepting 78 as a normal lifespan. 78. I want to live a lot longer than 78, and I want to live well. When you walk by the rosemary or lavender and you can smell it on your jeans 2 hours later, do we think that that was just superfluous? God created plants for our good and for our pleasure. So we know plant matter is here for our good and our pleasure, but there are other smells God created for our good, safety, efficacy, and ecstasy, and our pleasure. And some of those is the way birth and nursing smells. So I'm going to say something that's it might be pretty unpopular because we love our oils so much, but I'm really not a fan of oiling baby's head or mommy's breasts until nursing is well established. Because baby was already born with a limbic imprint. That limbic imprint is that of your amniotic fluid. And amniotic fluid has, some people describe it as a sweet wheat smell. So like if you could combine like honeydew melon and wheat, it's like that. Not fully yeasty, but should I keep going on? Should I keep describing what amniotic fluid smells like? So there's this amniotic fluid smell. Guess what kind of smell comes from a woman's nipples after she has a baby? It smells like amniotic fluid. Have you ever heard of the breast crawl for an infant? Time and time again, you can watch videos of it. It's astounding. It's phenomenal that infants, when laid on their mother's belly, if the mother didn't touch them, which I can't imagine not touching and pulling them up and smelling and loving, but if the mother didn't touch them, if the mother was injured, paralyzed, in a coma, that baby would crawl straight to the breast and latch on. Why? Because God connected it by smell. And so for baby to smell that first and get that well established is very important. Now, disclaimer, if there were an issue with the baby, would I grab my oils first? Yes. If there was an issue with mom, would I grab my oils first? Yes. But in this case, we need to let the oil that God put in us work first. We need to let that work first because that's what baby's looking for. That through the third into the fourth stage is a time of reconnect. And my mom always called it the there you are. There you are. It's that there you are stage of mom and baby reconnecting. And this connection's incredibly powerful. And that limbic system imprint is incredibly powerful. And it's going to speak volumes to the mom's body. The other thing it's going to do, remember I said oxytocin was most powerful between those two times. That release, that mega release of oxytocin, which is that hormone of love and connection, is going to tell mom's body that it's okay and it's time to release the placenta. At that time, there's an even bigger surge through the breasts that release the signal to let down that first golden milk for baby that has a smell of what? Amniotic fluid. How brilliant is that? So we don't want to mess with that. In the absence of any actual need, I don't believe in messing with that. I really don't. You have forever in eternity to anoint an oil, but these precious times are very important. So there's a soft spot on the top of the baby's head, and this is for a few reasons. One is, of course, that it can collapse in on itself just a wee bit during birth to get through the very dangerous birth canal. We always tease about, it's so dangerous, there might be barbed wire up in there. So the baby's head will squish in a wee bit, and it will do this dance. Now, in the case of my last child, she did like a Thriller dance where she was trying to rip my cervix open. And baby will do this dance, and then we have this beautiful little soft spot. Everybody says, don't touch the soft spot. Well, the soft spot takes quite some time to close up. And there's a reason for that too. God could have made any amount of time here, but it is for connection, that mom-baby connection that's so important, because there are glands in the baby that come out through the hair follicles very strongly through that soft spot. And those hormones release a signal to mom's nose. And mom's nose takes in the information, makes a limbic imprint into her system that connects to what? To her breast, to change the composition of the breast milk according to the baby's needs. Less sugar, more sugar, fewer amino acids, more protein, less protein. The baby's smell is telling your breast milk what the recipe should be. That's phenomenal. Only God can do that. That's phenomenal piece of science. If that doesn't blow you away, I don't know, maybe you weren't breastfed enough. I don't know. That should blow us all away. So we need to honor that fourth stage. And that fourth stage is that there you are stage of reconnection. But what about safety? Well, Heather, that's all great and wonderful, and everybody should have a home birth, and nobody should talk to the mother, and blah, 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 which is true. I don't want to be talked to at all, even by John. I just yell at him when it's time to catch the baby. Like, that's pretty much it. But what about safety? Again, we got to come back to how much power are we going to give fear? How much rent are we going to allow fear to take up in our heart and mind? What we are afraid of often comes to pass. Setting our intentions high. But just in terms of logic, let's talk about the safety of essential oils during your pregnancy and after. Now, I'm not covering birth. I just told you what I think about that. Get nursing established. Use oils if something else came up. Get nursing established. But in terms of just common sense, do you know I'm not going to give you links for this. You got to look it up yourself. I'm not giving you all these links, but it's there. You can find it. The CDC reports an average of 450 deaths per year from people rolling out of bed. The CDC reports an average of 77 children per year who die choking on hot dogs. And yet, hot dogs are still sold in the market. Now, the American Academy of Pediatrics has demanded a label on the hot dogs that it's a choking hazard, but yet we still do it. 77 deaths per year. 30-something, 34, 36. Hold on, I've got it. 34. 34 people die per year from dog attacks in the United States. Yet, we don't see that as major danger. You know, how many scary mommy blogs are there? They're warning all the other moms, don't have a dog. Don't let your kids play with dogs. Stay away from the dogs. We don't. We still call it man's best friend. 34 a year. On average, 117 baby boys die in the United States per year from complications of circumcision, which is a unnecessary medical procedure. 117. Are we okay with that? And yet we're going to allow people to create fear in us when the CDC reports how many deaths per year on essential oils, no matter how you use them, no matter which even crappy ones you use, because the CDC is not separating Young Living essential oils and everything crappy on the shelf. Now, I wouldn't use the crappy stuff, but let's just say, for like argument's sake, play the devil's advocate. If you were using the crappy stuff on the shelf, guess how many reports per year use of essential oils? 13 people per year die from vending machines. 13. Yet, they're in every school, in every hospital, in every office building. And it's not including the junk that comes out of the vending machines that kills them slowly. It's just vending machines falling over. So how much fear are we going to let in? So if you read your books, and I hope you do. Oh, sorry. If you read your books, you will see there are some use with caution oils. Again, if it makes you feel uncomfortable, don't do it, okay? And so this is what I always tell people. If they're like, well, I'm not really comfortable using that on my child, then don't. Like, I'm not going to force you. Do I use it on my kid? Absolutely. Would I tell you you need to? No. Why? Because Young Living has over 200 oils. There's an oil for that. Whatever it is, there's an oil for that, and there's more oils for that. And so I don't know why we get bogged down with this, don't use this one in pregnancy. First of all, if it were really that dangerous, we would have some CDC reports on it. We don't. Do you know the only actual deaths that I've ever been able to trace, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, the actual deaths from usage of essential oils were reported many years ago, and it was 2 women who drank copious amounts of clary sage to try to induce an abortion. If you look at the original, and you have to go back. If you look at the original studies about clary sage, do you know how it was performed? They took a dead rat, a pregnant dead rat. They cut it in half. They dropped clary sage on the uterus contracted. Therefore, clary sage causes uterine contraction. I'm not a dead rat. I'm slightly more complex and aware. I'm not a dead rat. So again, how much fear are we going to take forward? At the end of the day, what is it about? It's about personal autonomy. I don't give prescriptive advice about prenatals. I don't give prescriptive advice about oils in pregnancy or in birth. Why? That's the mom's job. It's always the mom's job. We have to work harder on education and living so far above the wellness line, we don't even see it down there. We don't even see it. I'm taking my stuff, I'm feeling good, right? So the education needs to come before these things happen, because that mom, left to her own intuition, when her intuition's intact, is going to make the right choice. And again, if someone says, well, I read you should never use this on your child, or you should never use that in pregnancy, you know what you can tell them? Okay, then don't. There's no skin off my nose. Like, what's the big deal, right? We need to be empowering people to make their own decisions. So in this group, Denise Easton has a talk on personal autonomy. She calls it You Are the Boss of You. And she goes through what we teach in our teams, which is you can abdicate authority, but you cannot abdicate consequences. So if you're the one living with the consequences, you might as well be the one living with the authority too, right? And so there are some slides in this group you can look at to encourage you. And I'm going to encourage you to look in-house for your education. So in terms of education on oils, we know that Young Living essential oils cannot be compared to other oils. But even, like I said, even if you're playing devil's advocate and you're looking at CDC reports and what's big and bad and scary, they're not separating. So even then, the cruddy ones from the store seem relatively safe, right? So your reference books, you want to have your reference books Gentle Babies has recipes. I told you guys I only had one recipe for you. That's because I don't give prescriptive anything. Gentle Babies has some recipes if you want that. And I also said that I do not read books that edify the midwife. And it's not that I'm against midwives, but I think that we should be edifying the process. We should be edifying how beautiful birth is and how capable most of us are of doing it without intervention, and how the limbic system works in that. Because remember, that hormone cocktail, the measurements of the adrenaline and the noradrenaline, the prolactin and the oxytocin, all of those measurements can be messed up. And they're messed up first in the mom's heart and mind because we tell her something. Usually they're not messed up. I'm going to tell you this. They're not messed up by emergency. If there's a true emergency, something like cord prolapse, if there's a true emergency, most mothers in labor actually have their wits about them and they make the right choice on their own without being told what to do. They make the right choice because their mom intuition said, something's not okay. My favorite authors about birth and pregnancy are Sarah Buckley. These are non-oily books. These are just about birth and pregnancy, and they are geared towards the mom. And if you are a doula, a childbirth educator, a midwife, if there were two books, these are the two books I put into mom's hands. These are the two books that when my mom was a midwife, that she put into mom's hands on the tail end of her midwifery. And that is Gentle Birth, Gentle Birth, Gentle Mothering by Sarah Buckley. She's an Australian doctor. She's a fabulous family friend of ours. And then Sheila Stubbs, Having a Baby the Easy Way by Someone Who Learned the Hard Way. And it's a fun read. It's just her stories. But again, remember talking about counterfeit money and how you learn the true from the false. You don't study the false. You study the true. If you want to know what real peppermint smells like, you smell our peppermint oil over and over and over and over and over again. And the first time you're introduced to a counterfeit peppermint oil, you know instantly that's not the real thing. Study the real thing. Study birth the way it should be. Okay, so I'm going to go over some questions. There are so many comments here. I can't even get to it. So I'm going to go over questions. Thank you, whoever typed that out. Okay, Natalie K. and Candace Oliver asked about gestational diabetes. Okay, so knowing that I don't believe that pregnancy is pathological, what do you think I'm going to tell you about that? So here's the nitty-gritty about gestational diabetes. I think most gestational diabetes is a farce. I think that most of it does not exist. And it's very uncommon for a woman to become pathological just because she is growing a baby. Remember, it is phenomenal that you get pregnant and you grow a baby and you don't have to wake up every morning and turn on the grow baby switch. Your body just does it. Your body also filters everything for that baby. Do you know it takes 3 brains to grow a baby? Your brain, the placenta, baby's brain. They're all working. They're all working to level hormones. They're working to keep mom happy and comfortable. They're working to grow baby, but it's not pathological. True gestational diabetes normally happens when there's diabetes in the family. So some symptoms of true gestational diabetes would be massive gait wane, giant babies. Like if you had 10 pounders in your first 2 pregnancies and you were gaining 75 pounds, you might have true gestational diabetes. But just because you failed a glucose test does not mean you have true gestational diabetes. I highly encourage you to do the research yourself and know that the numbers for the glucose test were changed in the 80s, 79? 1979? Something like that. Let me see if I wrote it down. Yeah, I think it was 79. So same thing, even if there's glucose spill into urine, that could just be your body protecting the baby from too much sugar. It's not necessarily gestational diabetes. I would look into the Brewer diet personally, if that were me. And I would read, there's a midwife by the name of Gloria LeMay, and she has some articles on gestational diabetes. There's also articles on the Midwifery Today website about gestational diabetes. I would do my own research and look at those numbers, because unless you know the number range, then we're kind of sitting ducks. We have whatever they tell us we have because we don't understand it. So yeah, most gestational diabetes is a load of crap. I mean, if I ate 4 pieces of cheesecake in a row, yes, my body's going to have a really hard time dealing with that glycogen conversion. And that's what they do with this glucose test. I mean, they're slamming you with so much sugar, and you're not normally doing that throughout your pregnancy. You're not slamming down several bowls of ice cream or 4 pieces of cheesecake at one time. I hope you're not. If you are, then you might actually have gestational diabetes because you're eating crap all the time. But for most women, I think it's actually your body doing what it's supposed to do. So, yeah, women don't suddenly become pathological. Okay, oils to stay away from during nursing. Well, what do you think? What have you found in your research? What are you comfortable with? I know that's not the answer some of you want, but that's my answer. Okay, so I read about fennel and basil rubbing on breast to increase milk supply. What makes you think the milk supply is low is my first question. Again, why are we labeling this as pathological? Maybe milk works great. The best thing to get up milk supply is actually to nurse your baby more. But in the absence of that, I don't know why you would do it right on the breast. I wouldn't see a need for that. I would take it internally or something. I wouldn't mess with what baby smells right there. Maybe when baby's older, like if you're still wanting to nurse when they're, 1.5, 2, and you feel like it's going down, but really supply and demand for most people. Now, where this is a true issue for some people is, your PCOS moms and stuff like that. They are going to have problems with supply. In that case, do whatever you need to do. But again, I don't like the prescriptive advice. Like, what makes you think supply is low? Is supply actually low? Are you not spending enough time nursing? Does baby have good latch? Do you need to maybe see a lactation consultant to check baby's latch? Because sometimes we're not getting a good supply just because of the simple baby doesn't have their lips in the right place, and so it's not sending the right signals. Otherwise, I personally wouldn't do it on the breast. That's me, not prescriptive. And someone else asked about acne. So again, prescriptive advice, hormones, here's another question you can ask yourself. This is for you, this is for your teams, this is for working with pregnant women. What other systems create acne? What other systems, because we can speak compliantly when we're talking about system function and the products labeled to support healthy system function. So some people have acne because they don't have healthy excretory system function. So you can look at the products that support a healthy, remember way up here, excretory system, right? And you can, of course, use things topically, and there's a lot out there, and 2 seconds on the internet will tell you, give you some ideas on how to support that topically. But outside of fluctuating hormones, you're going to look for a system function, not symptom management. Okay. So how are we going to help moms? How are we going to help these women? I'm going to give you some book recommendations that are not about birth specifically, but a lot of us need help. Some of us need to forgive ourselves. Some of us need to forgive our moms. Some of us need to forgive our doctors, our husbands, our OBs, our midwives, because maybe you had a birth experience that's still bugging your spirit. Maybe you had that moment like I had when I saw my face in the video and thought no woman should be at war when she's giving birth. So we need to be facilitating emotional wellness. And if we always come in with prescriptive mindset about oils or birth or pregnancy, we're missing the mark. A healthy mom emotionally is going to be fit for motherhood, and the blessing there will be a generation of learning and love and wholeness and wellness, because we have facilitated proper forgiving and accepting. And we have a lot of that to do. We need to be able to accept what comes into our lives, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, and know that sometimes all we see is one thread in the tapestry that God is weaving for your life. And seeing one thread doesn't give you the big picture, because it might be that scarlet thread. It might be some pain or disappointment. And I've heard a lot of disappointing birth stories. I've had a lot of women tell me, I didn't know that, Heather. I didn't know that. I was told that baby was too big and we had to take it now. I didn't know that size didn't matter. I didn't know that the cervix doesn't dilate out, but creates muscle tissue up to the top of the fundus. I thought I just wasn't dilating. So we need to deal with the heart of the issue, which is our ability to mother our children from the get-go, wherever that falls. So when you have people, if you are, or somebody on your team or whatever, if they have birth trauma, it lives with them. I mean, it stays. I hear these stories all the time. So we need to be birthing peace. We need to be birthing ability, and we need to be birthing autonomy. So helping our moms before they get to the childbirth to be well and whole emotionally is the best thing we can do for them. And really it's the only direction we should be sending them, because we are not the doctor. And for a lot of us, we're not the midwife. And even the doctor or midwife, you know what they are? Hired consultants. They should be paid consultants. The mom is the ultimate expert and authority in her own body, her baby, her pregnancy, and her birth. Everyone else is just a hired consultant. So I'm going to give you some resources that I love. This book, if you don't know how to use this book, learn how to use this book. Also, Gary Young has an article that is printed in the Essential Oils Desk Reference titled Letting Go with Essential Oils, and it's a very simple protocol for emotional release. And if we're setting our intention on healthy baby, healthy pregnancy, healthy birth, if we're setting our intention on high standards of beauty and wholeness, then we can set our intention and just go through that protocol. This book is also helpful. This book lines up with this book, Louise Hay's Heal Your Body, which also lines up with this book, Feelings Buried Alive Never Die. These two books are not oily, but they have charts in them that connect emotions with certain ailments or body parts that lines up with the blue book, Releasing Emotional Patterns with Essential Oils. And so it's just a great, it's a great resource when you're trying to figure out what is going on, or how to get to the bottom of that feeling or that emotion, or your own disappointment or anger about your birth or something that happened. And yeah. And of course, I've got a million other books. I love that are third-party resources that you should all be reading. And yes. So my heart is to, of course, first and foremost, to equip and empower people to be their own authority, because I think that's the only thing that's going to change society. And I also believe, because I'm a Christian, I'm a believer, and I believe that we are not fighting just things we can see with our eyes. I think that Satan has a strong hold on moms, on their ability to mother. And if the first thing they can take away from us is our ability to grow a healthy baby or to birth a healthy baby because somehow your body failed, he's doing a good job. And again, please don't message me with like, I would have died. Yeah, I know, some of you would have. Remember me talking about the World Health Organization and that sweet spot between 10 and 15%? If you are legitimately in that 10 to 15%, and you know, my dear friend, Sandy Boudreau, had Journey preterm. They tried all they could. Her intention was set for healthy baby. Her body had issues and it didn't go according to plan. I'm not talking about the Sandy Boudreaus, okay? Obviously, there are exceptions to every rule. I'm talking about almost the rest of you. That if Satan can plant a seed of doubt about the most basic function of getting the baby out and nursing the baby, what other seeds of doubt can he plant about your ability to care for your own child? It's pretty powerful. It's a very powerful wedge. It's also a very powerful wedge to remove the dad from the process of pregnancy and birth and put another male between mom and dad as an authority figure. You think that might be disempowering to a dad? It might be. So, I hope this information was helpful. I hope that you feel empowered to empower your people. If you're not a member of Young Living Essential Oils, I encourage you to go back to the person who talked to you about Young Living Essential Oils, because they are the best oils in the world. Hands down, bar none. Absolutely life-changing. My intro to essential oils was one of emotion, which I thought was ridiculous. I thought there's no reason for that. These people just need Jesus. Didn't think oils could help emotions. And I was really wrong about that. Very, very wrong. So if you are not oily yet, I encourage you to go to that person and tell them that you're ready to go, because you would be joining, by and large, a community of people who is very, very interested in your wellness and your well-being. And of course, the oils are just exquisite. And other than that, if you are building a Young Living business and you were hoping for prescriptive tips or tricks, I only have one. Well, I have two, really. Use your oils and love them. Use them around people. Encourage pregnant moms to get going on her own education and usage so she can be prepared and armed. And my only really tip is that if a mom has had a baby and she hasn't urinated for a few hours, you can put peppermint in the toilet and have her sit on it, and the fumes of the peppermint may encourage urination. That's about as prescriptive as you will ever see me get on this topic. So I'm going to leave this up in the group. You're welcome to share it, because we are so well above that wellness line. And I will try to answer questions or field questions, and my moderators will be answering questions too. Thank you so much. I love you guys. I love Team Young Living. Let's help moms own their choices by encouraging personal autonomy and education. Have a great night.